You know, people often throw around this idea that you're just being lazy if you pray while lying down. There's this rigid insistence that true reverence means you absolutely have to be standing tall, or maybe kneeling perfectly straight on a hard floor. But think about this for a second. What if one of the absolute most powerful, literal, life-altering prayers ever recorded happened while someone was resting completely flat on their back? And what if God didn't just hear that prayer, but answered it right then and there? We're going to peel back the layers of all that man-made religious tradition to find a deeply comforting reality about what is actually desired from us.
Because really, prayer is about connection, not choreography. It's an intimate, flowing communication, not some rehearsed performance where you have to perfectly hit your marks. The religious crowd, well, they might judge you for not kneeling perfectly in a quiet, dimly lit sanctuary, but Scripture actually reveals a completely different story. It shows us that God doesn't care about your physical posture. He cares exclusively about the raw sincerity of your heart.
Just consider King Hezekiah for a moment. He was lying on his deathbed when the prophet Isaiah walked in and delivered the heaviest news imaginable. He literally told him, "Put your house in order because you are going to die." I mean, just imagine the sheer weight of hearing that. But 2 Kings chapter 20 tells us that Hezekiah simply turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. He didn't jump up, he didn't summon the energy to get out of bed and kneel. He just turned his face, resting exactly where he was, and completely poured out his soul.
And the response? It was profound and it was immediate. Actually, before Isaiah could even walk out of the middle courtyard, God stopped him right in his tracks. He told Isaiah to turn right back around. Hezekiah's prayer had been heard, his tears were seen, and God was instantly adding 15 years to his life. Just let that sink in. God heard this broken, desperate prayer from a dying man lying completely flat and literally moved heaven and earth to answer it.
We actually see this beautiful grace again at the very end of Jacob's incredibly long life. Genesis 47 documents his fading final moments. Now, this was a man who had famously wrestled with God, right? But now his physical body was completely failing him. Scripture specifically notes that he worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. He was so incredibly frail that he needed a piece of wood just to stay upright. Yet God completely accepted his worship, proving for sure that our physical capability is never, ever a barrier to Him.
Think about the times when you usually find yourself praying while lying down. Honestly, it's usually when you are completely exhausted, maybe you're battling an illness, or it's just when the house is finally quiet late at night. Those are the exact moments when you are most vulnerable and the most honest. David, a man famously described as being after God's own heart, modeled this beautifully. In Psalm 63, he literally writes about remembering God on his bed through the dark watches of the night. He openly and willingly prayed right from the comfort of his rest.
But it actually goes even deeper than simply being acceptable. Psalm 4 explicitly instructs us, saying, "When you are on your beds, search your hearts and be silent." Think about that phrasing. We are literally guided to use our time lying down for deep reflection and prayerful silence. It is a divine invitation. So praying from your bed isn't just something that's tolerated because you're tired. It is a profoundly, deeply biblical practice.
And this brings us to the stark, obvious difference between authenticity and mere appearance. You see, the ancient Pharisees, they were absolute masters of appearance. They turned prayer into this grand public spectacle on street corners, just to show off their intense discipline. But it was entirely a hollow performance. God isn't looking for a show. He overwhelmingly prefers the authentic, messy, sometimes tearful prayers of the weary over these polished, stiff routines that are really just designed for human applause.
Jesus addressed this directly in Matthew 6. He strongly cautioned against being like the hypocrites who just love to pray standing up solely to be seen by everybody else. Now, to be perfectly clear, Jesus wasn't against the physical act of standing. Not at all. He was entirely against faking spiritual superiority. He completely dismantled this idea that looking the part physically somehow equals a genuine, deep connection spiritually. If you want to see a picture of absolute, unfiltered authenticity, just look at Hannah in 1 Samuel chapter 1. She was drowning in so much sorrow that as she prayed, her lips were moving but absolutely no sound was coming out. She wasn't perfectly composed. She wasn't holding on to her dignity. She was, quite literally, completely wrecked. Her silent agony was so raw and so real that the priest, Eli, actually mistook her for being drunk. Yet, it was exactly this unfiltered, messy prayer that moved God to profoundly bless her.
Which really brings us to a super practical reality. The Apostle Paul writes that we should pray without ceasing. Well, if we take that literally, it is physically impossible to kneel 24 hours a day. You'd never get anything done.
Praying without ceasing really means that prayer is this gentle, continuous thread woven through your entire day. It happens at 6 a.m. when you're cooking breakfast, at noon while you're deep in your work, at 6 p.m. when you're navigating terrible traffic, and yes, at 11 p.m. when you finally lie down to rest.
And there is such a deep, soothing comfort in Romans 8:26. It gently reminds us that the Spirit actively helps us in our weakness. It intercedes for us when we don't even have the mental or physical strength to know what to say. God entirely understands when you are just too exhausted or too overwhelmed or too sick to muster up some formal, rigid prayer position. He absolutely doesn't demand that you find the physical strength to impress Him. He lovingly, gently meets you exactly where you are.
Let's just bring this right into our present lives for a second. Think about the night shift worker who is just pushing through pure exhaustion, or the drained parent who finally collapses into bed, finding the very first quiet moment in the dark, or the warrior battling chronic pain for whom standing is literally impossible. Do you think God values their prayers any less? Absolutely not. In those stripped-down, quiet moments of sheer vulnerability, that is exactly where true, unpretentious intimacy flourishes.
The Apostle Paul had this really profound revelation about physical limitation. When he pleaded with God, the gentle response he got was, "My power is made perfect in weakness." Your physical weakness, your exhaustion, your absolute inability to sit perfectly upright, none of this limits God. In reality, stepping back from trying to be so strong all the time actually creates the perfect, quiet space for His strength to naturally flow right in. So when we step back and look at all of this, we see a very hard line drawn between religion and relationship. Religion, well, it's a heavy burden. It demands strict formulas, the exact right words, and the completely correct posture before you can even be heard. Relationship, however, breathes freedom. It simply invites you to come exactly as you are right now, fully trusting that you are completely understood whether you're standing 10 feet tall or lying completely still. And to further prove that there is absolutely no divine checklist for posture, just look at history's most unconventional prayers. Jonah literally cried out from the suffocating belly of a fish. Peter screamed out a desperate, panicked prayer while physically sinking beneath crashing waves. And the thief hung completely immobilized in sheer agony on a cross. In every single one of those instances, God heard them. Their deeply, severely compromised physical positions did not block their access to divine grace for a single second.
Because the beautiful foundational truth is this: God is checking your pulse, not your posture. He is simply looking to see if your heart is alive, if it's genuine, and if it's reaching out for Him. When you finally strip away that heavy need to perform and simply offer a sincere, beating heart, that's when true connection happens. Even if you are lying completely flat on your back in the middle of the night, He is entirely present and He is intimately listening.
So I want to leave you with a gentle challenge to think about. What is truly stopping you from simply pouring out your heart from wherever you are positioned right at this very moment? It really is time to let go of any lingering guilt about not perfectly fitting into some man-made religious mold. Embrace the incredible freedom of having constant, unrestricted access to God. Whether you are walking around, sitting at your desk, or resting your head on your pillow tonight, just breathe, be real, and simply pray.